Okay. Should we change my name on that to John? People can see that it's John. I sign out. Let me
Yeah, right now it's saying Bruce is there.
change it to John.
Mm-hmm.
Can you rename it? If you can't, I can. I think. You're gonna have to do it there.
Thanks for all the early joiners in here. We're just hanging out until we get started around the top of the hour.
5 minutes.
And we've got some exciting news from the Super Don family today that nobody knows about except me, because you told me.
I didn't even know about it until 30 minutes ago.
I know. It's very cool. Very cool. Really good news. Anybody on the East Coast time zone, you guys are troopers to be with us this late at night. Unless you're already night owls, then no worries. But glad everybody could be here from every time zone that you are on.
We're all set.
There's John.
Here he is. How you doing?
Doing well. Like I said, I was just joking with Super Don. It was like we're just on the air a little bit ago. We're back.
Hey, no rest for the Patriots.
That's right.
I guess is all the early people listening to us?
I believe so.
Have
Yeah,
our-
we've got our mics hot. So it's the behind the scenes, back room, back studio, backlot studio tour.
Awesome. That's great. Are you going to hold it?
Yeah, we got to have really good reception.
He's got, my gosh, he'll be flexing for the whole time, which would be up.
Stan doesn't stop working out for nobody.
He doesn't. I tell you, he went and ran our road last night until dark through the mud and the grime and the gravel. It's awesome.
Well, I keep asking about his injury recently, not because I really am concerned, just because I want to race him while he's injured, because I'll have a chance to keep up with him for a quarter way around the track.
That's right. He's probably still dogging you, trying to avoid you.
I will have to take 3
You know
steps
me.
for every one step he takes. That's
I still think we should do a pay-per-view for that.
We really should. Actually, maybe we could put him in a big cage.
Oh, you know how I love to be caged. No,
Sunday.
it's the Freedom Tour only.
That's right. Graham Bell. Alexander Robert Scott Graham Bell.
There you go.
A nice ring to it.
There you go.
Yeah, I've heard that name.
Absolutely. That's great. Can we have that bigger instead of seeing all these other people on there? Or is that
There you go.
Yeah, change that in the corner.
which corner without losing it? I was up on a conference call today. How did it go with our friend Ty Bollinger today?
Well, we had Charlene, so it went even better.
It does, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, we teased Ty because, well, he's a funny looking guy. But then again, so am I.
That's right.
So having Charlene on elevated the visuals, that's for sure. So
True. We probably shouldn't let Charlene take Cardio Miracle. Maybe her macula will improve and she'll realize what she's been married to all these years.
I would love that joke. That's great. That was good.
Well, that's great. Great.
Oh my goodness. All right.
We're so excited. You talk about, we're like a couple of thoroughbreds ready to kick the barn down here. We're how excited to be with our friends, Super Don and Robert Scott. It's really great honor. We love doing this. We've had a wonderful response with our sharing with people the uniqueness of nitric oxide and how it's applicable to Cardio Miracle and the unique traits of that. And we'll be hoping to educate people and give them a lot of very relevant information tonight. So,
yeah, well, I'm excited. We're going to, like I said, this is our launch of our first ever hosted webinar, the Robert Scott Bell Show webinar for any topic that we've hosted. So I'm honored to do it with you guys. So thank you for helping us put this together.
And Don's not charging overtime, I hope.
Super Don, no, I can't afford Super Don in reality.
Overtime.
Is
that an option?
That's all he does. You know what? He wakes up and he's in overtime because he never stops.
It's a member of the smallest union, right? It's the Robert Scott Bell Radio Show Union.
There you go.
So Joe will give us the go-ahead when to start officially, and we'll welcome everybody. But again, preliminary, just chatting, getting it all ready for everybody. We've had, a great response to the email send-outs. Thank you for everybody that did respond. I know that not everybody can be with us live, but the good news is that, if those who aren't here catching it later, we'll be able to get a link to you on that. So if friends and family members that you want to be here and they've already signed up, they'll still have access to it.
I'm giving you a thumbs up, everybody.
Yeah, with a great echo there, Joe. Good, thanks.
A little echo here, and
all right, we are recording. So let me welcome you officially to the first ever Robert Scott Bell Show hosted webinar. I call it, normally bonus time. We do a little bit after every broadcast to go extra over 2 hours. This is way over time. We're going into the evening for most of you in North America, of course, and those of you who are asleep in other parts of the world catching it later, good morning, wherever you are. Thank you for being here. There's not a lot of, topics that, let's say over the years, I felt like, man, we've got to go so deep into those topics that we can't even do it within the show or one show. We've done a lot of shows now on this topic of nitric oxide. And just so you know, I'm not quick to pick up on new products on the Robert Scott Bell Show. If you're new to the show, you'll learn about that, but very slow because I'm meticulous about what we research and what we bring into the mix here. And John Hewlett and I met many years ago, and yet it took a Patriot level event that brought us back together in our concerns for what was happening in terms of the threats to freedom in our country. Of course, I've been addressing the threats to health freedom ever since I've been in broadcast media since 1999. But without our health, freedom, I'm not going to say it's meaningless, but it's less meaningful when we are enslaved to, for instance, pharmaceutical drugs or other, let's say, doctors that maybe mean well, but unfortunately kind of connect us to things that can suppress things or force things to happen, but don't genuinely stimulate the body to do what it's designed to do. And that is be a healing, self-healing, self-correcting organism, the body itself. And one of those things we learned about along the way is this molecule known as nitric oxide. So we are going to have an opportunity to go deeper today than we have on the show, although we have covered some science on the show related to it. But Super Don has had some amazing experiences with it, which only encouraged me more to say, wow, we are so on the right track with this. And my experience has been phenomenal. We may share more about that for those that are new to it, and my wife especially. And we're going to learn about Super Don's wife even more tonight, because we just learned something 30 minutes before coming to this thing. Everybody's going to be blown away by what you're about to learn about Super Don's wife, since we've all started the Cardio Miracle, which we'll get to more specifically. But right now, since we've been able to facilitate the production of nitric oxide in our bodies more efficiently, and that's really the focus of our first hour here together in going into deep dive of the science. We're joined by my good friends Stanholm Graham and John Hewlett from Cardio Miracle, of course. And I'll turn it over to you guys to kind of set the stage. This is maybe, I don't know how many of these webinars you've done since we got together here, but this is our first one with you. I'm really thrilled that you're here with us and grateful for all your support for what we do on the show as well, the message of health, freedom, and healing liberty.
We love what you do, Robert. We're very grateful for that as well. And it's essentially, this is our year anniversary from hooking up in late February a year ago, more officially, and then actually launching with the show. I believe it was about May. So we've had an amazing ride in the last 10 months with many of the Robert Scott Bell customers, with you, with Don, with wonderful interviews that we've had, a lot of fun that we've had on board with you. Our concern and our desire is to help people have the healthiest, best output of being able to help their body build their immune system. And it's so interesting because every day we turn around and in our world, the integrative and alternative world, all we hear about is building the immune system. And yet the rest of the world is still talking about pharmaceuticals, jabs, and variants, and all of these other things that are worrying people to death. And people don't realize that when you're under stress or fear, your nitric oxide and your vitamin D3 levels are dropping, and you're more susceptible to having a problem through the fear and the stress. So part of our message and our mission is to educate people that they don't have to fear the unknown. They can have things, they can take a supplement, they can take good food that will help strengthen their immune system and help protect them against the leading causes of death, but also against any of whatever this biological, manufactured, who knows what, viral situation that has dominated the world over the last 13 months. So we're excited about that. And of course, my good friend Stan Graham joined us just under 6 months ago. And my gosh, has he been, I mean, I feel like I went from riding a couple of donkeys to riding Secretariat at the Kentucky Derby. So it's been a lot of fun because I needed, just like you need Super Don, not
Right.
Dawn of the Dredges, you needed Super Don in order to help you move forward. I needed Super Stan to be able to help us accomplish so many things. And he has had an amazing experience in analyzing the clinical work and the data. He knew enough about nitric oxide to be competent, but my goodness, in the last 5 months, he's become a major expert on the physiology and also our clinical study, which is very, very unique. And, you know, one of the things we'd like to just make sure that the listeners tonight are aware of, I have spent 13 years developing the science and the opportunity of, I believe, the finest nitric oxide therapy that's available in the world. But any nitric oxide is good nitric oxide if it's not overkill. And so there is a free radical that can occur. And so though we're not here just to sit and, you know, promote our product for the next hour, we're here to explain there's a difference and that there are different ways to stimulate, and the results and the things that we have seen have come from essentially my 13 years of working with, in my opinion, the smartest people in the space in the world to be able to accomplish delivering safe, efficient, therapeutic nitric oxide with all kinds of benefits. So
now, for those of you that haven't met Stan, who's to the right-hand side, looking at him to the left of John, Stan is also amazing as an athlete. He is training to become the world record holder in the mile run for over 50 years of age. And like I said, that's why I was joking before we went to air officially about running with him, just trying to keep up with him for a quarter of a lap. But we're looking forward to that. But Stan's experience as a world-class athlete took another bump up by increasing nitric oxide production from within through the supplements we'll talk about as well eventually, and many of the benefits. Now, for you guys, I know you have a lot that you want to deliver, and I want to deliver. So over the course of the months we've been together, we've done some interviews with you, John, and Stan, and a lot of the focus on nitric oxide is thought to be vascular primarily. And while that's true, there's so many other aspects of benefit to health that when you sent me the scientific journal article on kidney health, I was immediately, I mean, my eyes got really big. I'm like, do you know how hard it is in medicine, modern medicine now I'm talking about, to deal with kidney issues? There's not a lot that they can do. Now, ultimately, when the kidneys fail, they'll keep you alive with hemodialysis. And it's a very personal story for me because I lost my dad, you know, over 10 years ago now. He had kidney failure. He was on hemodialysis, didn't last a long time. And I think if I knew to then what I know today now about nitric oxide, my gosh, could we have saved his life? And how many people are dealing with less than optimal kidney function? So I don't know if it's an appropriate place to start, but I certainly do not want to miss out on learning about its impact on the urinary tract, the kidneys particularly.
Well, the interesting thing is, Robert, and we're posting, I think, a couple of clinical studies and articles. If you Google up or go to wherever your search engines are, you can find out nitric oxide and kidney or renal failure. You'll see all kinds of things. And it's such an interesting education. And every time I look at a new topic, like when I looked at cancer, because nitric oxide really, it won the Nobel Prize, was awarded for cardiovascular function and the benefits to the heart and blood pressure and cardiovascular. So that's really a key thing along with diabetes. But it all comes back to the same systemic function of microcapillaries. Most people aren't aware that organs are merely large bundles of microcapillaries and lymphatic vessels and other cell tissue. And so if those microcapillaries are inflamed or not delivering blood, oxygen, and nutrients, they get occluded, they get inflamed, and they stop functioning properly. So the reason, the simple reason that kidney disease seems to be responding so remarkably to nitric oxide is if you have the right type of delivery, which we've worked very hard to accomplish, then the nitric oxide heals the inflammatory condition, minimizes the capillary plaque that stops the blood and the oxygen and the nutrients from flowing, and improves the lymphatic delivery and drainage of getting rid of the bad toxic waste that needs to be filtered out by the kidney. So if you end up having the water system plugged up coming in, and then the garbage system plugged out on the way out, then obviously your kidney's not going to function, nor is your heart, nor is your lungs, or nor is your liver and other types of things. So that's the obvious part. But maybe Stan would like to comment a little bit about some of the research that he's seen on why the kidneys seem to respond so well to nitric oxide and also therapeutic vitamin D3.
Yeah, and Robert, I think this would be a good conversation to develop. There's a triangular relationship, and pointed out in one of the studies that I think you've looked at as well, where the study was looking at the deficiency of nitric oxide in cases of chronic kidney disease. So here we have individuals who have chronic kidney disease and a review of what is the overall production of nitric oxide in their body. The consequence of that study, the study demonstrates that overall nitric oxide production decreases in those patients with chronic kidney disease, which creates a second comorbidity, cardiovascular disease. And so it's the relation, that poses, I think, Robert, just the relationship between those two primary organs. If you think about it, where you have a kidney that's failing, and the consequence of the kidney failure affects the production of a molecule in the body, which results in the systemic failure of a primary system, the cardiovascular system, which is not only your heart and your vascular system, but also your lymphatic system, as well as your hepatic system, which of course, your kidneys are a part of that system. So the body is, one of the underlying premises that we got to realize here is the body is an integrated system. You speak beautifully to this. I've heard you speak beautifully to this. This is a reality that our bodies are phenomenally integrated.
Yeah, that's a very important point. I don't know if you can show that study up on the screen, but I'm reading it as well as we're talking about it. Nitric oxide deficiency in chronic kidney disease. Again, this is something, I've dealt with these things homeopathically as well. And with other minerals that can help. And these are, these are things that we're not ignoring here in this discussion today, but going, a deep dive into the specifics of what we're finding out within the scientific published peer-reviewed literature as well on the benefits to something that is just devastating to so many. Now, particularly of the elder years, as I said, I speak from my heart about my own father's ultimate demise with kidney failure. And I'm looking at this and saying, how many people that we have, moms, dads, grandmas, grandpas, whatever, that are suffering with reduced kidney or renal function? Could it be as simple as, in addition to everything that we know that we've got to do by cleaning up our act and staying hydrated, the enhancement of the production of nitric oxide internally by introducing substances that can do that can actually reverse this? Now, I don't know at what point. In fact, I think I want to bring Super Don into the mix really quick here, because one of the things I learned, and we don't have to give it all away because there's a lot of things that we're just learned about. Super Don, your wife, Jenny, went in for a blood analysis, and she's had a history of renal disease, in fact. And now, since she's been doing the nitric oxide boosting supplement we're going to talk about later, the Cardio Miracle, there's been some significant analysis I just learned about 30 minutes ago.
And I learned about it 10 minutes before that. And it was just funny the way it happened was because I noticed that one of the topics we were going to talk about was chronic kidney disease. And I saw that and I was like, hey, hon, isn't that what you have? Is it chronic kidney? She's like, oh, yeah. And I'm like, oh. And she said, by the way, I forgot to tell you. Now, here's just the backstory on it. On her last 2 pregnancies, she ended up with eclampsia, and it did some real heavy duty damage to her kidneys. And after her last child, she ended up with, I think it was 25% functionality in one kidney, and then the other kidney was just up and down, but it was not good. And so she started on the Cardio Miracle a few months ago. And then a month ago, she had to go in for a blood test for something else. Then she just got another one a month later, yesterday. And so she shared these numbers with me. And, you have to understand, I'm not a doctor, scientist. I had to go Google all of these terms, try and figure out what they meant and all that kind of stuff. So, but for the people who do understand what these terms mean, here's an example of the results in 1 month that she had since she's been taking the Cardio Miracle. Her bun creatinine, normal ratio is supposed to be between 12 and 20. 1 month ago, it was 25. Yesterday, it was 16.7. Now, I believe that has to do with kidney function, correct?
Yes.
I believe the bun creatinine. Okay. Her chloride level is supposed to be between 101 and 111. A month ago, it was 115. Yesterday, it was 105. Her sodium level is supposed to be between 135 and 145. A month ago, it was 155. Yesterday, 134. Her GFR, which is another one I had to look up, but that also has to do, I guess, with like kidney filtration and stuff. Her GFR, normal is supposed to be above 60. It hasn't been above 60 for 2 years. And yesterday it was 90. That is just like, wow, right? And then her blood sugar. Here's something that's not, not about the kidney, but her blood sugar, her glucose should be somewhere between 74 and 106. A month ago, it was 144. Yesterday, 107. So it's like she read these numbers to me, and I had to kind of like sit there and kind of like, try and digest this with her. And then I let Robert know because he's the guy, right? And I'm like, these are good, right? He's like, yeah, those are really good. So I had my own story, which is not kidney related.
Yes.
Which was a thing that I've marveled about with the Cardio Miracle. And now I'm looking at this and I'm just like, I'm speechless. I don't know what to say.
Yeah, we'll get into the migraine things that went away for you, but I wanted to bring John and Stan back into the mix because, again, we just learned about this tonight right before we went to do this. So I'm like, yeah, because that was the one thing I was most excited to talk about with you guys, this study and these studies that have come out. And by the way, it looks like in the chat room, there are messages that are hyperlinking these studies. For those of you who are into the egghead science like I am, and some of you are, you can dig these out and read for yourself. This is fascinating, but to see a clinical case 1 month over 1 month, the numbers shift this much, John, dude, you're the man.
30 days, 10 to 20 to 30% improvement in those areas. And yet, you know what? I'm not surprised. I've been seeing this for years. I had a 82-year-old woman with 15% renal function making plans for her dialysis visits. And within 90 days, it went into the 20s, and 2 years later, it's now normal. And her nephrologist is blown out of his mind. He can't understand that how an 82-year-old that has cardiovascular issues in the past and has been on a steady downward renal failure track could have that kind of a turnaround. And so one of the exciting things is, but just the last week, I've been talking to one of the premier nephrologists in the world in California. And when I was explaining the science and how, I mean, this is one of the top in the world. And when I was explaining, because he knew enough about nitric oxide, he knew a lot about genetic deficiencies in people of color, African Americans, Native Americans, Polynesians, people from the Middle East. They have less nitric oxide genetically. They have less vitamin D genetically. And so they really have a problem. And so when I was explaining to him what we had put in this formulation, the antioxidants, the selenium, you know, when you go and you're one of your favorite things, Robert, and you go online and look up selenium and kidney failure or selenium and inflammation. Selenium is one of the most important things. So, but the challenge is, and the reason we've seen these kinds of results is the way they're combined together. Because if you have adequate 24-hour delivery of safe nitric oxide internally from the body, then the absorption of the vitamin D, the absorption of the selenium, the absorption of the beet and the carrot, which has a tremendous impact on the blood sugar, by the way, Don. That's what one of the ingredients in Cardio Miracle that makes a big impact on the insulin receptivity. And so that impacts the sugars. And so that's why when you combine renal failure in many cases, as you know, Robert, is a result of diabetes complication. Mm-hmm. But it all comes back, and you're the expert on this, it all comes back to systemic cause at the cellular basis, the microcapillary basis of all of the systems of the body, and an inflamed or dysfunctional lining called the endothelium. And the endothelial lining of all the organs, of all the capillaries, all the lymph vessels, all of those things are impacted by inflammation. And so as you heal that inflammation and then feed the cells with the right nutrients, opening them up and having them be more receptive with 24/7 nitric oxide, that's why you have these types of amazing over-the-top results.
Robert, one of the things that the Walensky study revealed, and this is a study specifically on the Cardio Miracle product from one of the top nitric oxide experts in the world, was that he states that in order to maintain the cardiovascular system, to maintain its function, as well as the function of other organs, there needs to be not just nitric oxide production in the body, but he pointed out specifically biologically produced nitric oxide at a bioavailable level at specific concentrations at different parts in the body. So it's not just a question of, have I eaten enough beets today?
Or taking a handful of arginine capsules from your local health food store.
So as it may not be surprising to understand that the lowest level of nitric oxide production of endothelium, nitric oxide production, is in the microcapillaries. On the other end of the spectrum, the rate of highest production of nitric oxide, endothelial nitric oxide, is in the heart. And so the function of this nitric oxide is to increase the flexibility of the muscle tissue of the heart and the muscle tissue of the vascular system. Well, then imagine you have all these organs that are shot through with thousands, literally tens of thousands of miles of microcapillaries, and they're not producing nitric oxide, or they're underproducing it, which means that there's insufficient oxygen to the cells of whatever organ we're talking about, because the blood isn't flowing there. So we're running into a major hypoxia issue.
Excess carbon dioxide and inadequate lymphatic drainage of the other toxic waste.
Yeah, and so then we get a cascade of effects. If the cells are starving for oxygen, what else are they starving for? Well, anything nutritionally, any kind of nutrition that the blood is going to be delivering. My dad, I grew up on a small farm, and my dad always told us, it was his analogy of, hey, finish the job. It was get the water to the end of the row.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're irrigating, if you don't get the water to the end of the row, then those crops out on the perimeter, they fail. Well, the job's not done. So get the water to the end of the row. That's the same kind of thing that we as individuals have to do with this cardiovascular system in terms of blood vessels, lymph system, et cetera, is how do we facilitate getting the blood to the end of the capillary row? Because otherwise it's pretty easy math to figure out what happens when you don't have enough oxygen.
Well, and we're still dealing with number 1 or 1A killer cardiovascular type diseases, cardiac events. We're seeing more of these things in the era of this last year of COVID crazy. And I want to bring this up because John also mentioned endothelial tissue. What we have found as the year progressed, those people who suffered the worst or even perished, there was a lot of negative impact on the endothelium in the body, not only in the vasculature, but in the lungs as well. And we see the benefit of nitric oxide. And in fact, we've covered a couple of times now, I think, peer-reviewed medical literature on nitric oxide as it relates to this fear of COVID. Now, setting aside the controversies about what it is, the manifestation of what happens is something that, we can argue causation, but we see that in the peer-reviewed article, and I don't know if we have it to link or send out to everybody today if they haven't seen it yet, is that nitric oxide has been shown to play a significant role in protecting people and even combating the exposure that people are concerned about right now. This is not a wishful thinking. This is something, you have it there as well as it relates to this. The endothelial impact of what's happened under our, COVID crazy last year. I don't know, John or Stan, if you want to add more into that understanding of how and why they're saying nitric oxide plays a very vital role here in protecting people in the midst of this.
Happy to. And you were right on the money, actually, in 2005, when the SARS virus, which was either manufactured or released or whatever happened with that, they started testing it after the craziness was over, the panic was over, and they found out that nitric oxide wiped out 95% of the virus. Well, nitric oxide is the body's most potent antioxidant. And so it deals with virus and the pathology of virus. And so one of the things that's important, that the latest clinical work has said that the complications that people have died from have been because of endothelial dysfunction. It's not blood clots. It's not pulmonary thrombosis. It's not people dying on the ventilator, even though they died on the ventilator. It was the systemic cause was endothelial dysfunction. And the reason 80% plus of the victims were African-American and Native American, elderly primarily, but their elderlies are 50 and 60 because they have a lower life expectancy, is they are endothelial dysfunctional genetically and have less nitric oxide, less vitamin D3. And so if you have friends, family, loved ones that are of any color per se, they need to seriously consider elevating their nitric oxide and their vitamin D3 together, because I believe that's the most efficacious way to deliver the vitamin D to the tissue, is by opening up those capillary walls in the microcapillaries again. So that's proven. And then the other studies have shown 90% of the deaths from this, whatever it is, virus, were deficient in vitamin D3. And frankly, I think the other 10% were never tested and they don't know. So the reality is it's almost universal. So if your vitamin D level that you can get tested, you could actually do our 90-day challenge where we provide the blood work or whatever on our website. But the reality is if your blood serum level of vitamin D is less than 40 or in the 30s, you are much more at risk than if it's in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And we have seen the delivery of nitric oxide with vitamin D together makes a huge impact on moving the needle of the vitamin D3 being bioavailable. And, one of the things we were laughing about, now we probably need a break, if we called it a potty break, is that Bruce from our office said that he found out that he's been supplementing pretty heavily on vitamin C. And when he chases it with a couple of servings of Cardio Miracle, his urine stream isn't fluorescent yellow anymore. It's clear. Well, interesting that the nitric oxide is making the vitamin C more bioavailable.
Interesting. Once again, we're dealing with endothelial tissue health and the damage that is done to it by many mechanisms and many things that are happening environmentally or other deficiencies that are apparent. I just want to go back to the kidney study real quick, because in the conclusion, if I can read that, maybe you guys can comment on this. It says total nitric oxide production is decreased in renal disease due to impaired endothelial and renal nitric oxide production. Many mechanisms are likely to be responsible, including substrate limitation due to decreased renal synthesis of L-arginine. You mentioned that earlier, and I know a lot of people that are aware of nitric oxide might say, hey, I'm just going to take L-arginine. There's so many pathways. There's also competing pathways, some things that will block the production and utilization. So when you think about formulating for nitric oxide, it isn't just, as I said, eating and taking one thing, although I agree beets are an excellent source of food, a good food for a lot of reasons. But think about the competing pathways and how are we enhancing the body's ability to produce and or utilize more efficiently the nitric oxide. And that's a whole other fascinating journey that you've been on, that maybe you can share some insights into that.
I'll share some for John, because what's fascinating as an athlete, particularly, you figure if it can really up a game for an athlete, an elite athlete, then imagine what it can do for someone who's trying to make, whose goals are a little lower, whose objectives are a little more normal.
Like Don and I, who aren't trying to break a world record other than in the sedentary position most of the time during the day.
Well, so what you say is true. There are a number of ways. There are lots of different cells in the body that produce nitric oxide. And there are multiple ways in which they do that. The key, nitric oxide that Cardio Miracle induces the production of, hanging participle there, is endothelial nitric oxide, which we know is really the most important nitric oxide production center in the body, simply because it's so systemic. I spoke earlier about the concentration of nitric oxide, as well as its bioavailability and biological production, so a couple of things. You mentioned L-arginine and the fact that, hey, you can take a shot of that. What benefit are you going to get? It may give you a short-term increase of nitric oxide, but there's a study that we actually could put up here for the folks to see, where elite male athletes who were training anaerobically, the study concluded there was zero benefit to short-term, pull that up, Joe, to short-term
Nitric oxide production.
Well, yeah, short-term, they were giving you shots of L-arginine, and that short-term relationship produced no nitric oxide benefit, whatever. In contrast, the Malinsky study specifically finds that long-term exposure to nitric oxide production based on John's formulation actually prevents, inhibits, and restores not just the endothelium, but the pathological pathways and expressions that lead to all these inflammatory and chronic diseases.
There's a study up right now on that particular issue. I was just thinking about, short burst. It's one thing if you maybe if you took it right before you ran a 50-yard dash, you get some benefit. But we're talking about sustainable long-term recoveries and optimizing function as well. And I think that's, an important distinction here for those that, are familiar with L-arginine and its use, and then realizing in real world studies what the limits are of that type of interaction from a supplemental perspective, and the distinct difference what we're trying to do to sustain a long-term recovery and improvement. But even in a short burst, like I said, I'm still stunned and astonished by Super Don's wife, and the response in 30 days, the blood work difference was just remarkable.
Yeah, because life is a long-term deal, right? You would hope so. I mean, we're here to do that. Life is a long-term expression. And so I actually had a lawyer in Toronto ask me a couple of weeks ago about, so he had experienced some great benefits from Cardio Miracle. And he said, well, Stan, how long do I have to take this stuff? I said, well, I don't know, Sanjay, how long do you have to eat? Because, I mean,
How long do you want to feel well?
Yeah.
I mean,
But because we know that nitric oxide is a biological function. It's a reaction to nitrate food sources. I mean, that's one way. It's an expression to an inducement from amino acids.
Yeah.
So if you're not ingesting those things, then you're not producing the nitric oxide. And then, so what are you going to do? So to me, it was a funny question because, well, how long do I have to take this stuff? It's not like how many cups of coffee do I have to drink to feel good? No, this is how long do you need to take nitric oxide so that your body can biologically produce what it needs to function properly, to restore, your organs, actually, your heart, your kidneys.
We're targeting optimum functioning, not just a short burst, quick one and out. And I think the folks that are joining us here know, especially if they're part of this show, everything we talk about is how do we sustain, the benefits that we're after. The quick fix thing, that was the old way of thinking in terms of allopathic medicine, immediate stop something from happening. I mean, there can be interventions that are life-saving. We don't dispute that. But in terms of sustainability, no, those very things that saved your life could kill you in modern medicine. And that's where we switch over to this understanding, again, supported by the peer-reviewed medical literature, and of course, observing it clinically, whether it be unofficially with Super Don's wife, or whether it be with my own experience when I started getting back into the gym some months ago, and I started with the Cardio Miracle Complex as well. And, I've won 3 challenges of the week. I've just turned 55 last month, and they have these challenges of the week all the time. And I'm competing with people a lot younger than me. A lot of them are. And I say, respect your elders when I'm there with them. And yet I'm able to sustain something that I'm thrilled about, to be able to do it. Just, for those that are, and I started in pretty good health, as John knows. I joked about it because I was like, why do I even need to do this, John? Right? I'm like, I'm okay. I'm fine. But I'm hitting levels of functionality in my 50s now, even though my diet is, as people know, it's 100% organic. I don't mess around. I take, whole food supplements, minerals and things. And I added this into the mix, and it just took it to another level. And again, my wife is sustaining improvements that we hadn't seen in years as well, since she incorporated it on a daily basis. There's another thing here in the conclusion of one of the other renal studies, the kidney studies. I want to read real quick. Results of the present study show that nitric oxide production is decreased in patients with renal failure. Okay, that we've already established, which is understandably one of the major factors causing ED in these patients. Yes, erectile dysfunction. And people are taking their lives into their own hands, taking drugs for erectile dysfunction. And yeah, I call that a recreational drug, weirdly enough, and they don't need to use
Depends
that.
on who your partner is, whether it's recreation.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a side effect. It used to be a side effect of this drug. They relabeled, Viagra for that. Yet erectile dysfunction is something that is clearly an effect of not adequate nitric oxide production in the body. So for those that are concerned about that in the male species of us, that is something to consider as well, just as I add that into the mix at the end of that renal study.
Well, it comes back again, of course, in that area. We're talking microcapillaries, and unless you're a porn star, then they might be macro capillaries. But for most people, it's a microcapillary situation. But the reality is, going back to the previous topic a little bit, is it's the difference between relaxing or restoring. Do you want to relax the artery, or do you want to restore the health of the artery? And that's the difference with sustained. You can relax the artery by taking nitroglycerin. You can relax the heart by taking nitroglycerin. It's a short fix. It robs the body of all of its nitric oxide in a quick fix. That's essentially what the blue pill does, is it absorbs and grabs all the nitric oxide in the area, and then it's depleted, which means you then are subjected to other possible side effects or problems, where our approach has been, as we've learned about this, to have dual pathway. We go through the mouth with the nitrates, and then we also go through the gut with the amino acids in order to extend the nitric oxide. And then we, for whatever reason, to support that, we put in 50 other ingredients to help get the best absorption that fights that those inflammatory things, which are the basis, as you know, systemically, of all chronic illness is inflammation.
But one of the beauties of what John has done with this formulation, Robert, is it does produce, as the Malinsky study demonstrates, it produces a maximal bioavailable endothelial nitric oxide. So the benefit that you're going to get for that is not only feeling great, having highly functioning organs, all those things that we've seen in Don's wife. I mean, that's just an anecdotal example, but we have thousands of those examples. The other side of this of the Cardio Miracle product is it's a dual composition. On the one side, you have amino acids and vitamin D3, which are friends in the production of endothelial nitric oxide. The second part of the Cardio Miracle composition is this family of anti-inflammatory and antioxidant foods. The reason that those are included and that they're absolutely necessary is because, like everything else in the body, nitric oxide has a biological duality. Like too little of it is bad, too much of it is bad. The natural outcome of nitric oxide production is a very dangerous free radical, an oxidative molecule called peroxynitrite. And what John has done has found the combination of these 50 plus ingredients, these anti-inflammatory and antioxidant foods that radically reduce and scavenge those peroxynitrite molecules that are naturally produced as a consequence of producing the good stuff, nitric oxide. So there are a lot of products out there. I mean, getting nitric oxide and boosting that is great, but if you don't take care of the other side of that coin, the peroxynitrites, then you've got some serious problems.
You can increase the free radicals, which
Right.
we know are not good for you. So that's the thing. And the key part is, it's interesting. And thanks to you, whenever I have these opportunities, I do a little more homework. And I was stunned personally myself when I looked up all of our organic fruits and vegetables, and their impact on inflammation was staggering. And even your favorite, selenium, was an amazing part. So when you take selenium, which is fantastic, but you combine it with nitric oxide, wow, you're getting much more bang for the buck, much more absorption, and much more value in fighting the inflammatory battle. Beautiful.
Now, Stan, you keep mentioning the Malinsky study, and I want to make sure people can access that information. Is that going to be a send out or a link in some way?
We showed it a minute ago, but I think Joe can pull that up again.
Okay.
That was a study, just for people to know, that we commissioned through the University of Ohio. Their premier chairman of the biochemistry department published over 400 plus articles on vitamin D3 and also on nitric oxide. He's been named the outstanding scientist in Europe. I mean, he has a list of accolades second to none. And we, before we could afford it, went back and he said, well, what if this doesn't work? Can you afford to spend this money? I said, we can't afford to spend the money, but we got to know if it works. And we got to know whether this product is as good as I think it is. And he called me a few weeks later and he said, you're a genius, but I don't think you know why. I don't think you're smart enough to know what you have created here. He says, I have never seen a nitric oxide product have this kind of impact ever. And so we're very, obviously cost us a bunch of money, but it was published just when I hooked up with you in Houston a year ago. It was published just as all this COVID stuff started. So we really didn't get the message out very effectively. But we have the only product of its type tested at the highest levels with nanosensors at the single endothelial cell level. And this study is fascinating. Stan is actually more proficient in it now than I am, because he read it, because he was looking seriously at taking a little detour into our business with us. And he read it 3 times, underlined it all twice. And even today, as he went through it again and was putting together over 32 major bullet points that most studies would be happy with one conclusion. Stan's come up with 32 in this study that are knock it out of the park type of statistics. So we're very proud of that. And so we can make claims at the cellular level, but really when we combine it with the many hundreds and thousands of people who tell us the results, we know that something's going in the right direction. That's why we've been so thrilled and grateful to have sources and communication centers like yourself to get involved in helping to spread the good word.
Well, I think we've only scratched the surface of the endothelial tissue that we don't normally want to scratch, but we want to heal it. But you know what I'm saying? This is something I'm still digesting, this Malinsky study that's been published here. It's so astonishing, as I said, that you have done something that is funny. Jokingly, that guy said, I don't think you're smart enough to understand what you did. It's like sometimes there's grace and there's, there are miracles. And I think, to call this product a miracle, I can't argue with it based on the results we're seeing. But as I like to dive into the science of it, and I'm still, again, digesting it all as I'm going through it and experiencing it myself, it really is, I think, touched by the grace of something, smarter than all of us
There's
you're
no,
tapping into.
There's no question. I was a financial guru, but let me tell you, I was a lousy chemistry student, an even worse biology student, and never took a nutrition class, which is probably obvious. But the reality is I've spent 12, 13 years talking to the smartest people. And it's interesting because even the smart geniuses who are the experts in certain areas, they've never connected the dots. And, our friend Dan Happel has his show called Connecting the Dots. Well, I really think that the only unique thing really that I was able to do was I wouldn't give up until I had the best of the best. We've improved it 5 times, but I connected the dots because it just made sense. It was logical. Well, when you've got blinders on as a researcher, all you may think about is the nitrate. You may think about the arginine resistance. You might think about the delivery of nitric oxide for some particular thing. I was looking at the big picture for normal people because, like you with your father with renal failure, my dad died of heart disease in his sleep at 62 years old. So heart disease was rampant in our family. And I was faced with having to have quadruple bypass after almost being killed on a routine appendectomy. I said, I think I've had enough of this hospital system. If I can't get an appendectomy right, I certainly don't want to messing with my heart. And that's what led me on this journey. And it has been so rewarding. I get phone call after phone call after phone call from people who say, this has given me my life back. And I say, well, welcome to becoming another one of our cardio miracles. Mm-hmm. And seriously, I couldn't be more happy. I mean, Don's story about his wife, seriously, one of the worst things in life is chemotherapy and dialysis. And when people get dialysis, it's a lifetime sentence to a lazy boy chair, 3 days a week of misery, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I think that also resulted in the untimely demise of my dad because he felt like a wild stallion was tethered, and it just broke his spirit ultimately. Exactly. And if I could say he died of kidney failure, I would say not really, because people live a long time on dialysis, right? And he was like, you could tell he'd lost his will at that point.
Exactly.
Right.
Sort of like what's happening in our country with us running around with masks on and being told what we can and can't do. And that's why we have to fight it by taking charge of our own health And you have been one of the great ambassadors of that. And the liberty of our choices is absolutely essential. In fact, we heard a great line from a guy who, I sent you the video on, Dr. Ryan Cole. If people want to look him up on vitamin D3, his presentation to the lieutenant governor of the state of Idaho. And he said, the best mask is the immune system.
Mhm. And that can get you deplatformed and banned and censored today to talk like that. You know, it's so funny. We, recently on our show, we learned we were unceremoniously banned from Spotify, one of our podcast sites.
They
But
didn't give you a plaque for that?
No, but the thing is, it's good news. We learned by inadvertently that we lost them, but we gained 7 other podcast sites. And one of those sites says we're in the top 2% of 2.2 million podcasts around the world. So we learned something because Spotify alerted us to something we didn't know. So, every time something you think bad happens, we can learn from it and learn that we are on a greater course to restore the things that are so important to us. Of course, we talk about health, but again, I don't separate it out from the principles of freedom or liberty to start, and to bring them together. It brings people from all backgrounds together, the desire for health and the desire for freedom. And I think to your point, John, about what we've been going through, somebody or some things trying to break our spirit, trying to break our will. And a lot of people are checking out. A lot of people have checked out, young people, depressed in despair because of what's happened. We do not have to live in fear. And one of the ways, in fact, you talk about a history of cardiovascular disease. Many families have that. And people are afraid, will I end up like my parent, or grandparent that happened to? My whole goal, and among many goals, is to help people to stop living in fear, because the fear itself induces disease and immune suppression. When you do the things that now we have scientific evidence to prove they do it, not only clinically, not only my experience anecdotally that we're talking about, or superdons, you can begin to walk through life knowing that you're breaking a cycle that you didn't know you were trapped in because of your own ignorance, or in some cases arrogance of medical man. And I'm just so, like I said, so thrilled that we get to do this, because as much as I love the deep dives in the science, I'm almost equally or maybe even more pleased every time I hear a story like Super Don's wife, or I can share a little bit about my wife, this to me is the miracle that's really happening before our eyes.
So it's real people, real results based upon real science. And the thing about it is, I was on the phone with another guy today, and I said, my objective is to bring the medical treatment up to the science that's already there. And the only way we're going to do it is things like the Malinsky study, the McMaster studies we're going to undertake in Canada, the Lundquist studies, perhaps at UCLA. We're going to prove all of these things on their terms, on their court, with their rules. So then they'll be irrefutable. But the one thing that all of your viewers, and I love so much, the types of people who follow you and my friend G. Edward Griffin and Mike Adams and Ty Bollinger, and the people that you and I both have so much regard for, is the fact we want a choice. It's our choice. And our choice is to choose. We choose for health. We choose for natural. We choose to do our own research. And then we will monitor the results. But we'll monitor them with blood work, with teeth exams, with the hygienist telling us now our periodontal disease is better, an eye exam with our macula being better. All of those are microcapillaries. It's just common sense. If you heal microcapillaries throughout your body, you will be feeling better. You'll have less symptoms of chronic illness, and your life and activity will be of greater value. And if that isn't worth a few bucks a day, then, what a shame, because when you're sick, you'll almost pay any amount to feel better. So why not invest ahead of the curve and have the best possible immune system to help alleviate some of these problems?
One of the things that I've said for many years is that the most dangerous thing you can have in America is really good medical insurance. And people at first they're like, what? And then they start laughing and they go, oh, yeah, I think I understand. Because you're going to be guaranteed to get every invasive test, poke, prod, drug, surgery, intervention that are known to be the third leading cause of death. And here we're talking about insurance not being throwing money at something that then doesn't really pay you back except to cover bills that you wouldn't have needed or had had you taken care of yourself in the first place. And so when we talk about the investment in health, there are certain things that I will not do without. And one of those things now is this nitric oxide producing balancing formula, but producing formula of the Cardio Miracle. Now, in the Malinsky paper, Stan, you bulleted a lot. I don't know if there are any bullets that you really feel impassioned to bring out verbally. I know people are going to be able to review the paper too after the fact. And also, I know we want to open it up to Q&A for those that, have specific angles or issues that we didn't cover or haven't covered yet that we'll be able to go deeper into. But I just wanted to throw that out, Stan, before we do Q&A. Are there any of the bullet points that you're like, wow, I really need to make everybody aware of this right away?
2 points. Thanks, Robert. I'm not really passionate about this. I'm kind of reserved and shy. But no, we'll include the link, this document specifically for the listeners here and for everybody who will see the recorded webinar. You'll see that these are statements, these are quotes directly out of the study itself, a leading nanotechnology laboratory at Ohio University, one of the leading labs in the world on this topic. You'll find that the statements frequently begin with, we found, we proved, the data clearly demonstrates, we opine, it is our opinion that. So declarative statements in a well-researched white paper. This lab, just for the listeners, folks, this lab is the first lab in the world, the only lab in the world now, but the first one as well, to measure the production of nitric oxide from a single endothelial cell with its own nanotechnology developed within the lab itself. Secondly, so we'll get you that document. You look at that, at those statements. I think, Robert, that document there is a call out. It's a call out. If people want to be healthier, they have the freedom to choose. We're making that choice very simple because this kind of data, this kind of information, I don't know where else you can get it. In terms of here's what's been discovered by a world leader and here are the outcomes with a specific product. We could make the production of nitric oxide a heck of a lot harder by telling you how many pounds of kale you got to eat every day and how many onions and how many carrots. And all the stuff that you'd have, the 10 pounds of plants you'd have to eat every day. Or you can take a couple of scoops of this. Yeah. And so it is a real choice. To argue about the value of freedom of choice is one thing, to have actual choices is another. And this is one of those choices that's really, really quite simple.
Well, I know that many of my listeners and viewers are already doing this every day, and I'm grateful for that because you're seeing the benefit and getting more. For those that are new, we are going to give you an opportunity to tap into this in an incredible way toward the end of it. But I do want to open it up for Q&A, questions and answers. I don't know if people are submitting them via typing them into the chat area or maybe or are we going to
We've got them. Joe's getting them.
Joe's getting them as well. Okay.
This is Joe Hicks, our IT genius, who helped put this together for us because I still struggle with a recording device on my television. So it's great to have Joe here to help us.
You forgot to tell Joe that we're intimidated by people that wear ties. I'm very nervous. I was like, are we being audited? What's happening?
No, his tennis game would intimidate you. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, no, I heard that he's really good there. So there's things I want to learn from you, running better, Stan, and of course tennis. I wouldn't mind playing tennis better because I'm not that good. So I got some great experts here. So
what do we got, Joe? Do we have any questions?
Yeah, first question, you'll have to repeat it, but how can Cardio Miracle help an already damaged dysfunctional lymphatic system?
Lymphatic system?
Yep.
How can Cardio Miracle help restore an already damaged lymphatic system? And the answer to that would be the same way any healthy cells replicate in the body. They replicate every, 100 days?
We're talking about regeneration now?
Generation. Mm-hmm. And what happens is that when cells have inadequate or out of balance carbon dioxide and oxygen, they replicate abnormally. So when you bring through the blood supply and oxygen delivery, even through the lymphatic endothelial cell, a normalized oxygen and carbon dioxide exit, you're going to see regenerative cells that replicate on a healthy basis. So like anything, in some cases, those degenerative lymphatics are probably from inflammation, just like a microcapillary is inflamed and occluded. So if people have ischemia, toxicity, one of the things that if you go also online and look up is that, and actually I think in the Malinsky study, there's a comment that nitric oxide has a dramatic impact on ischemia,
Yes.
which is by people say, oh, my swelling has gone down, or after they've had their surgery, their knee replacement or shoulder surgery or whatever, they see the swelling diminish. Well, that isn't just nitric, that's nitric oxide stimulating and helping the lymphatic vessels to function better with a stronger contraction. So again, depending on what the degenerative nature systemically is, it just is common sense that you're going to start replicating better, healthier cells if you're getting them the right oxygen, carbon dioxide combination, which is another thing that was done essentially at the Cleveland Clinic, or Case Western University said that nitric oxide helps balance out carbon dioxide and oxygen, thus making regular, better, optimum cell replication.
Nice. Joe, we got more questions?
Yes, this is from Annette. Can Cardio Miracle help and restore damage from macular degeneration?
Can Cardio Miracle and nitric oxide help restore damage or problems with macular degeneration? Do you want to address that?
Yes.
I think
Yeah.
Well, here's why. If you took a look at the back of your eye, of this organ that it has direct access to our brain, that it is a fishnet of microcapillaries. And again, folks, this comes back to the lymphatic system is part of the cardiovascular system. Our cells live by the oxygen they receive, the nutrients, the vitamins, the phytochemicals and polyphenols, all of the nutrition that we eat in the forms of food. All of that gets delivered through the blood. If the blood isn't reaching the tissue, then the cells are dying. And while they're dying, they're forming these abnormally, they're replicating abnormally. And so it is a spiral downward. So what can you do to change that? Well, one of the things the Malinsky study does say very emphatically, and there are thousands of studies also to back this up, is that you have a three-prong challenge with a sick cardiovascular system, lymphatic system, hepatic system. One, your blood flow sinks, just low blood flow. That has to do with the viscosity of your blood, which has also something to do with the speed at which your blood travels. You know that faster traveling blood produces, the vascular system in which fast traveling blood exists produces more nitric oxide. So you've got to get a healthy viscosity of your blood, raise that low blood level. The next issue is what John identified, what we all identified, ischemia, which is that blood penetration right into the tissues, getting the water to the end of the row. And so again, if the end of the row, those microcapillaries are shut down and you're starving cells, death is a daily consequence. Because and then finally the hypoxia issue, they're just not getting enough oxygen. And here's the other thing: where we have chronic disease persistent in a body, the bone tissue that produces red blood cells. This was discovered in a study last September. The bone tissue is producing blood with an abnormally low red blood cell count and an abnormally high white blood cell count. Why? Because the body is saying we need more white blood cells to respond to the inflamed conditions. And so just think what happens if you have fewer red blood cells to carry oxygen systemically because your blood's being built, generated, in a compromised state to begin with.
To respond to the inflammation.
Yeah.
We've had, by the way, one of the most exciting is we have one of our management team has diabetes. Another one of our top relationships like yourself has diabetes. Both of them in the last 90 days going to their ophthalmologist for their annual visits because one of the big systemic problems and complications of diabetes is people go blind. Both of them were told by their ophthalmologist that that was the best eye exam they'd had in 5 years, and that their maculas were reflecting normal, where they had been on a downward spiral over the last number of years since they had contracted diabetes. So we've seen it over and over again. And so obviously there are certain neurological and different aspects of eyesight and diseases of the eye. But for example, if you were to take lutein and zeaxanthin and some of the things that are good for eye health, but you also took a nitric oxide like Cardio Miracle, you would see a dramatic improvement even with those extra nutrients. And when we come out with an optometry product, which we will take our base nitric oxide and vitamin D delivery, and we'll add a couple of other key eye ingredients. But even without them, we've seen remarkable results. Joe, is there another question?
Yes, from Shane. Can nitric oxide alone reverse AFib?
Can nitric oxide alone reverse AFib? Well, the answer is everybody's AFib is a little different than other people's. My experience has been over now 14 years, I've seen a dramatic improvement in many, many AFib situations, because I personally believe, and I'm not a doctor and I don't play one on TV, even though I may look like a good old grandfatherly type. The reality is that when you relax the heart muscle and you heal the inflammation, it doesn't have to work quite as hard. And so the reality is that you should see an improvement in the erratic nature of the heartbeat. When it's totally electrical, then often that has to be repaired surgically. But many AFibs are, I believe, and you can Google up again, or DuckDuckGo up, maybe we should start referring to, you can look up AFib and nitric oxide, and in most cases, there's a lesser amount or a need for more nitric oxide to help relieve that condition. Now, one thing Stan can tell you as a world-class athlete, and we just recently, and we'll send a video out from this Mark Glasser that was pretty impressive, is their pulse rate has dropped 10 to 20% since they've been on Cardio Miracle. And you've probably seen that yourself with your workout regimen.
Oh yeah, I've been joking about, when I'm doing my jump rope, trying to get my heart rate up, I'm getting frustrated. It's like, come on, get it going. My heart rate's still staying low. It's like, it should be really in that red zone, but it's not, because of, a big part of this nitric oxide production. And by the way, we've heard from some of our listeners and viewers taking the nitric oxide with tremendous impact, positive impact, side benefits, I call them, on hypertension, blood pressure issues.
Oh yeah, no question. And the cardiovascular stuff is very highly documented research, et cetera. But really, in the simplistic form, if you have a chronic illness, including even depression, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, lupus, Crohn's disease, et cetera, just go online, look it up with nitric oxide, and you will, without exception, find a deficiency of vitamin D3 and a deficiency of nitric oxide on any condition. And that's where you should be motivated to fix that. You don't need to take 500 capsules of various things and hope for the best. You can isolate and get good advice, like from someone like yourself or a good health practitioner, and take a couple of different things combined with a comprehensive formula of 24/7 nitric oxide and vitamin D, and you're going to be able to address most of the needs and issues that you'd like to for far less money and far better effectiveness than you'd get by taking a cupboard full of supplements every day.
Yeah, we're making it much simpler to do the things that will get people back to where they want to be, or where they even thought they could never get to again. That's what I'm seeing. People are like, I had no idea I could do that again. Really? This is great. And with Super Don, I want to bring him back into the mix here real quick, because The longtime listeners to the show, of course, know the story here, but maybe some of you are new and got off the email list. And Super Don, the side benefit you had was quite unexpected because I would lose you all too often, albeit you were battle back as fast as you could to migraines before this Cardio Miracle came into your daily regimen.
Yeah. It was quite the one of the biggest aha moments I think I've ever had in my life, because part of the show that we do 2 hours a day, 6 days a week, is people will ask questions. We'll get listener questions. And every once in a while we'd get a listener question. Somebody'd be like, what do I do about migraines? And so, we got into the conversation, and you'd always go, okay, Super Don, here's the migraine question. That's for you because you're the migraine guy, right?
Yeah.
Because I was dealing with at least one migraine a week. It was chronic, and I'd had that for a few years. And so then we got hooked up with John, and he was like, here, try the Cardio Miracle. And so I started taking the Cardio Miracle, and it was a couple of months after I had started using the Cardio Miracle, we got one of those migraine questions again. So you're like, okay, Super Don, here, what do you do about migraines? And so I started to go into talking about my migraines, and suddenly I stopped and I was like, wait a minute. I haven't had a migraine in like 2 months. What? Hold it. Whoa. Hey, hold the stop.
Hold the train.
Yeah. I'm like, whoa. And I thought about it. I was like, wait a minute. That coincided right with the time when I started on the Cardio Miracle. And so, as time would go on, we'd get John back on the show, and I'd give the update. Yeah, it's been 4 months now. I haven't had a migraine. You'd come back on. Yeah, it's been 6 months now. Haven't had a migraine. It's been, I guess, now May, April, almost a year now since I started taking the Cardio Miracle. And so we're in March, April, May. So we'll say it's
10 months.
10 months.
Yeah.
I've had one migraine in 10 months. I went from about 4 a month to 1 in 10 months. And that to me, that gave me my life back. That just because anybody who has migraines knows. It's miserable.
Pain is not good.
No.
And results may vary because people's circumstance can be totally different in how they manage it. But in general terms, you're increasing oxygen, you're reducing inflammation, you're curing neurological cells and damage in the brain, and it's only common sense, and better lymphatic drainage, which takes the pressure off of the brain and those sensitive neurological vessels, and that just is common sense that they should diminish. Now, if you're, in a rage, screaming 20 hours a day, or don't get any sleep, or other toxic things, then obviously you're not going to have that kind of result. But we've seen significant improvement in lower severity and lower occurrences in things like that. And as you and I both know, pain is not very fun, and most people will do almost anything to avoid it. The other side of it is the vitamin D and the antioxidants help with mental clarity and depression. And so it's the vitamin D, and I believe Cardio Miracle is the best natural antidepressant that I'm aware of. And we've seen great results with that because they do all systemically tie in together. Mm-hmm. And if you can help get rid of the systemic issues at the cellular level, you're going to see a lot of your symptoms that are what we categorize as autoimmune diseases diminish.
And even one of the findings you'll read in the white papers is that nitric oxide production by the endothelium heals the endothelium. It's a very delicate surfacing on the interior of the entire vascular system, and so it can be abrased, it can be damaged, it can be worn out over time because we eat toxic, edible things. We live in a fairly toxic environment. All of those things have costs on that very delicate lining inside of our vascular system. If that lining, that's the endothelium that produces the nitric oxide that Cardio Miracle creates, right? The introduction of the amino acids in D3 to the endothelium that causes it to create nitric oxide by doing that, by doing what it's supposed to do biologically, it heals itself. And the result of that is your plaque decreases. Your blood gets cleaned up. You start having an experience inside your vascular system where your blood is flowing like it's running down a water slide instead of a rocky, stony river up in, the high Uintas. It makes a big difference of whether you have a luminal type of blood flow or a tubular blood flow, whether it's rough and tumble or whether it's just a straight shot like down a steep water slide. Makes a huge difference. The other thing I'd point out, Robert, is that the endothelium itself is the communication interface between the blood and the body.
Mm-hmm.
And if the folks listening can just think on that for a moment, how does your body communicate the information that has been invested in the blood based on what you put in your mouth? All the nutrients that everything we ingest in order to help our bodies function. How does that information, that nutrition is information, how does that get from the blood into the body? The answer is the endothelium. It's the communication interface between the blood and the body. When that's not healthy, you have a communication, what is it? We have a communication problem here. Well,
Failure to communicate.
we have a failure to communicate. Sure,
You
cool
gotta
hand
be old,
Luke,
you gotta
right?
be old enough to remember that.
Cool
one,
hand
though.
Luke. We have a failure to communicate. When you heal the endothelium, you've got some fabulous communication between your blood and your tissue, the rest of the tissue in your body.
Right. And just another side benefit for Super Don, when the migraine stopped, he was really thrilled because I couldn't harass him anymore about needing to do coffee enemas, which he refused to do anyway. So he was out of that. Yeah. So
Another
right.
question here, Joe.
Joe, go ahead.
Does the product conflict with any prescription medications for high blood pressure or low thyroid or any for that matter?
Does nitric oxide and specifically Cardio Miracle have any kind of a contraindicated situation with other prescriptions? The answer is almost never. The only exception potentially is that you do need to watch your levels. And I'm not a doctor, not medical advice. You need to consult with your health professional on however you might wean yourself off of any of those cardiovascular drugs. They will make the drugs work better because they'll be more absorbable. And one thing I wanted to mention before that I think's valid and important is when we take over-the-counter drugs, ibuprofen, Advil, et cetera, to relieve symptoms, we're relieving the pain, but systemically we're damaging our endothelium. So that's why things get worse before they get better. So one of the great things to remember, I occasionally have something. I mean, Stan had a toothache the other day, a tooth problem, and he needed to take reluctantly a prescription that he normally would never take. But in the process, he's been eating a crazy diet of natural things to make sure that it doesn't destroy his gut flora in the process of trying to relieve this issue until he can figure out the dental solution properly. But there's a huge challenge when people get hooked, as you know, on aspirin, ibuprofen, Advil, whatever, and Aleve. And then all of a sudden they go, well, why don't I have any lining left in my stomach? Why do I have acid reflux? Why do I have hypertension? Well, it's because these drugs are taken through your body. They're abrasing with their toxicity your entire endothelial system, making your nitric oxide production even worse. And then they're going to go to your liver and your kidneys and help damage them at the same time. So it's sort of like flushing acid down a toilet with PVC pipe and then wondering why the pipe is ruined. So you have to be really wise in thinking about today's pain may not necessarily be the systemic problem. And what nitric oxide and what we've tried to advocate here is that you're getting at the systemic level of balancing the oxygen and the carbon dioxide, as well as relaxing and healing those abrasions and that inflammation, and then making the endothelial lining able to express more nitric oxide efficiently for a longer period of time by the stimulus of these integrated 50 ingredients we put in this formula.
Mhm.
Another
Excellent.
question?
One last question.
One last.
It says something about periodontal, but it says, will it help my gums?
Wow. Will it help his gums in periodontal disease?
Yes.
Unbelievable. The results are almost as dramatic as Dawn's wife's renal blood readings. The reason is your gums are filled with microcapillaries. Go take an ice pick and stick it into your gums, and you'll see that there's a lot of blood. Well, that's because there's a lot of capillaries in your gums. So when you heal those capillaries, we've seen people in 60, 90 days with their gum bleeding spots drop from 20. I've had dentists whose wives called me on the phone and said, my husband's been a top-notch dentist for 30 years. His bleeding spots have dropped from 25 to 10. His periodontal pockets have dropped in half in 90 days on Cardio Miracle. How can that happen? I said, it's healing microcapillaries. It's healing, the medical world didn't even know, Scott, that we had a lymphatic system above our shoulders until 2016 or something. They didn't even think that there was even lymphatic vessels anywhere. If you can imagine, I mean, that's almost like, a bloodletting type of science. I mean, where in the world were they thinking? Any massage therapist would tell you.
Quick, get the leeches.
Yeah, get the leeches. So the reality is, absolutely, if you want to, but if you have a periodontal issue, swish the Cardio Miracle for a minute, then swallow, take it regularly, and you will blow. I mean, G. Edward Griffin, he hadn't been to the dentist in like 10 years. He's 89 years old. He went a couple of years ago, and his hygienist says, oh, Mr. Griffin, you must be flossing twice a day. Your oral health has never looked this good. What are you doing differently? He goes, nothing other than taking a supplement with nitric oxide. Mm-hmm. And they were blown away. So if you want to keep your choppers, you want to keep your teeth, and you don't want bleeding gums all the time, give it a shot. I think only your hygienist will be able to tell you what's happening.
So the question is, how do we give it a shot, right? I drink it every morning, sometimes twice a day. Super Don, I think, has been doing it twice a day. And the results for our wives, his wife, my wife, amazing, as well as our own. And many people that are already here may have already gotten some, want to get more. Those that are new to it will want to know how to access it. And of course, if you're doing anything special for folks because they're participating with us here, that's always great, a wonderful bonus. And so what will we do from here?
Well, we're going to have to refinance Don's house because we shot the wad on your birthday. But the reality is we had to come up with something for our good people. So we decided to package with our 90 serve, our fantastic 15 single packs that are so portable and great for being on the run, the gym, in your purse, at the office, instead of having you carry around your aspirin bottle, you can carry around your Cardio Miracle. So we've offered a nice 15% off the 60 serve, plus an ebook on gut health that you've done, plus free shipping. And then for the 90 serve, which is an even better value, you get a $49 value of our Cardio Miracle singles, 15 singles. So a really nice savings of about 36% on that. So we're delighted to do that. And then obviously, once you become a customer, we have our Miracle Rewards program where you buy 10 canisters over a period of time, you get a free one. And then we also provide free shipping and the Robert Scott Bell family 15% on those who go on to our automatic shipment after this particular sale. So this sale is to help introduce people to our single packs and new listeners to the Cardio Miracle. We have an unconditional money back guarantee. We just say, be honest, try it, test it. And like ourselves, I mean, you were a tough sale, Robert. Don was easy because he was sick, but you were tough. But, let me just say from the bottom of my heart, nothing's better than seeing your wife's health improve in life. Makes for a happy life. Happy wife, happy life. Well, let me tell you, my wife, in the 7 years we've been together, it has given her life back. She takes it literally and almost in tears. This is my wife. And she says, I hope you have a 2-year supply of Cardio Miracle in the basement, because I can't live without it. It is the most important thing I do every day for my health. And she had chronic fatigue. She had all kinds of issues, fibromyalgia. She had low vitamin D. She spent weeks in bed with some of these attacks from the chronic fatigue. And it's made all the difference in the world in her life. So, do yourself a favor, do your mom a favor, do your dad a favor, do a brother or sister, share this information, go to the Robert Scott Bell website, take advantage of this. This is a great value for the money. There is nothing better than your health, your life, and increasing your nitric oxide and vitamin D levels.
Beautiful. Joe, was there any other questions that came in since the last one?
Yeah, a couple.
Couple more.
It says, I drink 16 ounces of celery juice on an empty stomach and wait about an hour to drink Cardio Miracle. Is there enough time? Is that enough time?
They drink 16 ounces of celery juice every day, and then she waits about 60 minutes to do the Cardio Miracle. Absolutely. Plenty of time. Probably 30 minutes would even be fine on that. What we basically say, an empty stomach is optimum, or with fruit or vegetable juice. You could actually drink, I don't know, it might impact the benefit of the celery a little bit, but primarily any juice is fine. We just recommend not having a major dose of 10 grams or more of protein at the same time, because protein will fight the nitric oxide pathway. They jostle for space in the pathway. So we mainly recommend half an hour before protein or food, an hour after protein or that type of food. But you can always take it with a carbohydrate. You can make it into a fruit smoothie. Just don't throw in 35 grams of protein at the same time.
One more question.
One more question.
She has adrenal fatigue and constantly exhausted and do not sleep well. What's your experience, or what have people been saying about Cardio Miracle and that?
Adrenal fatigue and sleep issues. What have people been saying about Cardio Miracle? Obviously, those are, every person's different. Their blood chemistry is different. Their lifestyle is different. Their caffeine habits are different. Their over-the-counter drugs are different, prescriptions. Primarily, we've seen really good things happen with the hormones for women and thyroid. Many of our people are still taking bioidentical hormones to help deal with thyroid issues. I'm not really a big expert on thyroid issues on that standpoint, but I've actually had a couple of people tell me that their thyroid, which had been partially removed, had started growing back. So that was interesting, but that was the most extreme of that. But as far as sleep, most people report that they sleep deeper and better taking Cardio Miracle, even at bedtime. But there's about 10% that it makes them feel more alert. There's no caffeine or stimulants in it. It's just good stuff, good oxygen. I take it right before bed and I sleep, without a problem. But if sleep becomes an issue that you feel like it does definitely help your energy, because you're getting pure nutrition. You're getting organic fruits and vegetables that most people aren't getting, and you're delivering it systemically in a very absorbable, bioavailable way. So of course you're going to have more energy. I take it whenever I'm dragging. If I'm driving, instead of stopping and getting a hot chocolate or a cherry Coke, I just take another couple doses of Cardio Miracle and I'm wide awake for another 3 hours to my destination. And I keep a pretty crazy schedule. So I found it to be very helpful, but some people actually who are concerned about sleep take it an hour before dinner or in the afternoon to get them through the day. But we really think that most people who are suffering from energy or chronic illness really benefit from 2 doses a day. And if you're a little bit short for your weight, like me, or have family history or other things, you might want to take 4 servings a day to see the benefit. We often tell people, say, well, I'm not feeling anything. You say, double down, take twice as much for 30 days. We'll refund your money. And they call back and they go, wow, I had no idea. So everyone's blood chemistry and makeup is different, but we've seen that. Stan, do you want to comment on that?
No, I think that's it. Let's,
2 more questions if you'll take them.
2 more questions. We're
Yep,
almost
still in
done.
time.
We're on union time. Go ahead.
Is there a benefit for leaky gut, or can it help with pancreatitis?
Is there a benefit for leaky gut? If you really examine what leaky gut is, it's an inflammatory condition of tearing up that tissue. And when you heal tissue, including the microcapillaries, you're going to see benefit. I've had my cousin, my nephew, and numerous other friends who had chronic Crohn's disease, and the first relief they've ever gotten was from increasing their nitric oxide with Cardio Miracle. Also, the leaky gut thing, pancreatitis. Pancreatitis, what is the titus? Inflammation. Any titus is an inflammatory condition. So, of course, if you improve, and that comes back to insulin resistance, and it comes back to diabetic and blood sugar and all those types of things. You know, Don's wife saw her blood sugar drop precipitously in 30 days. Well, believe me, if you have less sugar and a better glucose ratio and insulin receptivity, you're probably going to see an improved pancreas.
Yeah. I would say we've mentioned the word inflammation multiple times. If we could be maybe a little more specific about that, what it is. When we talk in relative terms to chronic diseases like your itises, your arthritis, pancreatitis, diabetes, etc., Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, neurodegenerative diseases, the chronic inflammation in the body simply means that your white blood cells, your macrophages that are induced by, say, IL-6, Robert, you can speak eloquently to this. Your body's telling your immune system that it is under attack.
Needs help.
And so what it's doing is sending in the military. It's sending in the special forces team to figure out what's the problem. The situation is chronic because the problem they're trying to solve isn't resolvable. That may have to do something with your what you're eating. Your eating habits may have something to do with your stress levels. Environment
of where you live or work.
A lot of contributions that way, cortisol levels. I mean, so understanding what's happening in your body, that you actually have food, Cardio Miracle is food, and food is functional. You can use it to regulate the immune function of your body, whether, to relax or call back those special forces that are showing up in acute injury situations and those that are showing up in chronic situations, to stop the production of inflammatory situations so the white blood cells retreat, and then you have some other anti-inflammatory molecules going to show up and clean up the mess and resolve that inflammatory situation. So it's the belief, it's the body's belief that it is under constant attack. That's what when we talk about chronic inflammation in a short way, that's another way of talking about what's actually happening. Your body thinks it's injured. And so it's responding with inflammatory molecules, what it's supposed to do.
Another aspect of, modulation of the immune system here, so critically important as we discuss the thing I don't like to discuss, but have to, the risk for those who have taken the experimental injections, that are out right now.
Yes.
And the predictions by some physician friends of mine that I featured on the show, and we're going to do more on that, are predicting cytokine storms like a Category 6 hurricane level that people don't survive.
Autoimmune diseases and people dropping from them like flies.
Yeah. So this is going to become more important by the day.
Yeah.
And I'm just so blessed to know you guys and that you're in my life and that you've helped Super Don and his wife and me and my wife and so many here that probably are already utilizing it. If you put that up on the screen one more time, Joe, the deal for those. So if you missed it, it's incredible. It's, normally you'll get a great deal just because you're part of the Robert Scott Bell Show audience. But this 90 serving canister plus a 15-pack single serve, a 36% savings plus free shipping is amazing. That's like more than doubling the normal discount. So take advantage of that and share that with your friends and family members that will benefit, as you've seen, as I've seen now, and it's become a critical part of my daily regimen. It's integrated. It's part of what I do every day now. and I'm not stopping. And I know that most folks that are starting it don't either, because they see the benefit. And I know that in the limited time we have tonight, which is more than a normal show, the topic that we were able to deep dive with you guys, there may be questions that pop up later for folks.
Just
You
send
know
them
who
to
you are.
us, send
Yeah.
them to us and we'll respond at the next show
Yeah.
or even personally. I had phone calls and I've had emails and texts, and we're delighted. One of the other things that we do is we will do for your group is we'll also do a personalized coaching follow-up to help them with the protocol. And that's
Okay.
$100 value, but we will call all of your customers again who come on board through this special to make sure they're having a great experience. I had a funny, interesting call the other day. A guy called me and he was telling me all of his troubles. And he was saying, I've been taking it for 3 weeks and I don't know that I'd really feel a difference. And I asked what his problems was. And, he basically said, I've had this blood problem. I'm on 6 medications. I'm going through a divorce. I, had financial problems, lost my house. I've been in COVID, blah, 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 blah. And I said to him, Ken, how long did it take you to get in this condition? And he said, 40 years. And I said, and you think taking 2 doses of my product in 3 weeks sporadically, not even every day, is going to all of a sudden solve 40 years of your problems and neglect and hereditary and environmental issues and stress and everything else? He goes, sounds pretty stupid, doesn't it? And I said, I'll tell you what, you can quote me, I'll guarantee it. Take 4 servings a day for 30 days, and you will call me back and tell me that I saved your life. And I believe that. I've seen it over and over and over again. So we'll refund I said, I'll refund your money. I said, seriously, I said, this phone call, this 30 minutes I've been talking to you off a cliff for the last 30 minutes cost me about 10 grand in my time. I said, so I'm not worried about your $100. I'm worried about you, Ken. And this will give you your life back. And just like, I mean, really, it almost brings me to an emotional end to hear. I mean, I can't even imagine my good, dear friend now, Don, having to, at some point, see his wife on dialysis. I mean, seriously. So putting that off, eliminating it perhaps from the table. We can't eliminate everything, but my goodness, what a miracle. And that's truly the highlight of my day today, is hearing that report on her kidney. And I mean that sincerely. I couldn't be more happy that inside of a year's anniversary that Super Don and his wife have gotten a new measure of their life and more hope and functionality for their kids and families and loved ones, that other people, you can't put a price on it. So I'm so grateful that he shared that with us. And we hope others will learn from these experiences and realize the precious nature of our health and well-being.
Yeah. Super Don, thanks for sharing that. Thanks to your wife for allowing us to learn of that today. That was amazing.
Well, thank you. I mean, thank you, John. The story that I'm telling is a result of what it is that you've done, for us with this cardio miracle. And so, I was excited to tell the story. I mean, I was giddy, because I mean, that just to see results like that, it's just like, holy cow,
Yeah.
I mean,
well, we're in the final discussions with one of the top nephrologists in the world. And guess who's going to hear and see those numbers tomorrow? We're going to be able to save and influence many, many kidney impaired lives because of you sharing that story.
Dude, I'm so excited. Like I said, this is the most exciting of all the things we've been learning together with you on this topic. As I said today, this is a remarkable day for a lot of reasons. And I'm grateful for you guys. I'm grateful for Super Don. And Joe, thanks for helping us run this behind the scenes and in front of the scenes. And if there are any other calls to action, John, Stan, obviously we want to get together and run and eat and do fun things. And we're facilitating that for a lot of people here. And I want to hear from everybody. And I thank everybody. I wish I could thank everybody by name today, but please let us know your experiences. We want to hear back from you. We want to share your stories here on the Robert Scott Bell Show. If we get to do another webinar like this, we'll see how it goes, but I enjoy it. It's a bonus time because it's part of my mission to bring the power to heal back where it belongs with each and every one of you. And John, Stan, you're doing that in your own way and have added a lot to what we're able to offer on my show with Super Don, who I don't want to do it without him. So thank you guys. Anything that we need to leave the folks with
No,
before we
just,
sign
just
off?
thanks to your listeners. We hope that you've learned something. Take charge of your own health. Do the research. Test it on our nickel. We guarantee that you'll see great things happen if you take it faithfully. And all we ask for, we want to elevate the human condition for those who take the different things or not, whether they do. You cannot go wrong by improving your nitric oxide and vitamin D absorption. So all is not lost with any aspect or any condition. You can always improve it if you improve things at the systemic level. So thanks so much for being such a great host, Robert, and a great friend.
Thank you so much. And keep those questions coming even when we're off the air. We'll get them on the air. We'll get John and Stan back on the show as well. And share the good news, share the deals here that we've got. And if you want to share the video when you watch it at home later, we'll get you those links so you can watch it with your friends and family to have them impacted positively like we all are here. Thank you, Super Don.
Thank you.
Till tomorrow's broadcast, remember,
Yes.
it's the God's honest truth. The power to heal is yours.